Well, hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jane and today I'm going to be giving you a tour of my garden. Now, this isn't just because I love my garden and my garden is looking beautiful, though both of those things are true, and May is the month in the garden when it just looks at its best. But the reason I'm wanting to talk about it and to show you my garden is because of the real connection that there is between looking at the natural world and the way that we feel in our bodies, the way that we can become calmer, the way our nervous systems will just kind of relax a little bit when we look at nature. Now, in the 1980s, 1990s, there was a lot of research done in kind of clinical settings about how the presence of nature in really minimal ways could affect hospital outcomes. There's a very famous study of if you could see green from your hospital window, you needed fewer painkillers, you were in hospital for less time than if you were just looking at a blank wall. There was another one which showed images of the natural world while people were having dressings changed on burns and looking at what difference that made to perception of pain and so on. So there was all of this research done that showed that interacting with the natural world, even if it was as minimal as being able to see a view or watching a video of the natural world, makes a difference to the way that we perceive stress, the way that we perceive pain, our ability to heal ourselves, our ability to remain resilient in life. I used to love, as a child, these amazing, what do you call them, stop motion pictures of flowers growing and blooming, all of those kinds of things, where there was no narrative, it was kind of like a stepping away from care into beauty. Now, the reason that I've been thinking about this is that last week I watched a nature program and I'd been kind of aware that there had been, over the decades, more and more putting in a narrative, treating a nature program as though it was a movie with kind of protagonists and names and that kind of thing. But this particular nature program, it was set in a garden, and I think that maybe because I love my garden and I love watching nature and things, it was really quite obvious to me, all of the attempts to add in peril, get people on the edge of their seat. The music was like a thriller music. It was really loud. The shots were kind of cut away. They were merging two bits of film to suggest that, baby birds were in peril and all of this kind of thing. And instead of having that feeling of relaxation and joy and replenishment that you should get from watching something about the natural world, I came away from that program just really wrung out. So I thought that in doing my YouTube this week, I would try, in my tiny way, the very opposite, and just give you a tour around my garden in May, where there is no thriller music, but hopefully where you will be able to hear the birds over me talking. So I live in Stirlingshire in Scotland. It's kind of in the middle of Scotland, and I live about 5 minutes drive from Loch Lomond. And in fact, the edge of my garden is the edge of the Loch Lomond National Park. And the reason that that was chosen isn't because it is the edge of my garden, but because that is where the ice came to when Loch Lomond was under ice. So I live in a really beautiful area. We moved here 22 years ago, and at that point it was just a pony paddock. It was just grass. There was no trees, there was no hedges, it was just wire fences and grass. And we moved here because at that point I grew cut flowers and I was a florist. And I just wanted somewhere to be able to grow my cut flowers. So we planted hundreds and hundreds of hedging plants. We put in hundreds of trees. I planted all my bulbs and my annuals. We put up a polytunnel and I grew cut flowers. And then maybe, 15 years ago, I became ill, and maybe slightly longer than that. It became clear I couldn't do the physical labour of the flower garden. I sort of staggered on to do the last weddings, and then I kind of burnt myself out. I was exhausted and I didn't garden for a number of years. So all of the bit that you see was, the hedges were fine, but everything else was just like a waste ground. I had given a lot of plants away to friends, you know, all of the precious stuff I just gave away, and the rest became just like waste ground. And after a few years, my husband decided that a bit of an intervention was necessary. He probably got fed up with looking out onto a very weedy, overgrown area. But when I was away for the weekend, he got in diggers, he put in raised beds, he got in lots and lots of compost, and he created me a vegetable garden, which is what you can see now. I planted espalier fruit trees, and we put in this magnolia right in the middle. Now, I always wanted a magnolia because my first garden, which was kind of we lived in part of a late Georgian house, and we were in kind of what would have been the dairy, I think, and we had a small bit of garden, but in the middle of our bit of garden was a magnolia tree, presumably planted, I think, in either the late 19th century or the early 20th century. And it dominated the garden. It was just beautiful. We put a seat round it, and I would spend a lot of time sitting there watching toddlers play in the sandpit and the slide and that kind of thing that was the rest of the garden. So I always wanted a magnolia, and we planted this one. But for the first however many years of its life, it has decided to flower in September. So it flowers in September, and then the frosts come along in the second week of September and turn all of the flowers brown, and it's very, very sad. So this is the first year it has actually flowered in the spring as it's meant to, and it has made me so happy because it is as I imagined it. It's frothy and light and blossomy and optimistic, and it goes so well with the apple blossom on the espaliers. It goes with all of the narcissi that I have planted in the beds, particularly these sort of pale yellow, really creamy white narcissi that are all over the garden, and it makes me happy. The rest of the garden, it's a mix of vegetable plants and flowers, because, you know, I love flowers, and dye plants. It is a proper cottage garden, and I keep it, as you'll see, really, really relaxed. We actually have about 3 or 4 acres here, The rest of the land goes down towards a stream and is a little bit on the other side of the stream. When we first came here, I had great plans for the whole thing. You know, I was somebody who had energy then. But those first years, there was lots of deer were coming up from the wood and eating everything in the garden. They ate all my tulips, they ate the first lot of apple trees we put in. They kept cutting the roses down to the ground. So I decided that it would be better if we planted some stuff for the deer further down the hill and then just left them to it. And this has been wonderful. I think it's called passive rewilding, but the rest of the garden is just there for the wildlife. We don't even go down. And it has meant that now we have so many birds. We have lots and lots of warblers, garden warblers, willow warblers, the whitethroats. We have lots of frogs and toads and newts. We have lots of buzzards and herons. There are hare. The deer are still here. There are badgers. There is meant to be an otter down there. There are pine martens. There, hedgehogs. We have all of this amazing wildlife right next to us, and it's wonderful. So I garden on this bit, this sort of like hedge enclosed area, where I still keep all of the edges really wild, because what I'm wanting is that the wildlife in the garden is enough to kind of regulate itself. Yes, there will be greenfly, aphids on the roses later in the season when it warms up, but that coincides with baby blue tits in the nests in the hedges, and the parents will be flying backwards and forwards with mouths stuffed full of aphids. And it's the same with all of these things. Yes, my kale, the young kale, will probably be eaten by cabbage white butterflies, but again, the birds, particularly blackbirds and so on, are desperate for those caterpillars. They need thousands of caterpillars to feed their babies. So here they get them. And it has meant, touch wood, that I have a garden where I have very little problem with slugs and snails, because the bird population and the toad population, the frog population are high enough that they eat slug eggs. They love slug eggs. And particularly in the spring, you'll see the blackbirds going along all the edges of the raised beds, moving all of the leaves so that they can get the slug eggs. So this is what I am trying to create here. I am trying to create something where I can sit, because I don't have a massive amount of energy. I'm no longer the person that moved into this garden 22 years ago. But I can sit in my garden and listen to all of those birds and look at the magnolia against the sky and appreciate the sun through the nettle patch and just feel my whole body relax. Now obviously I can't bring you here. Wouldn't that be lovely? Everybody could visit. But I hope that just having a little bit of a wander around gives you even a small bit of the joy that I feel in my garden.